Good evening, everyone. This is the time before the meeting starts to see if there's any questions from the audience on tonight's agenda. And I know we have a lady that would like to ask some questions. Would you mind coming up to the microphone and sitting down and turning it on, please?
My name is Arlene Elphick, and I live at number 450 Stanford Avenue in Shellybrook Estates. And I'm here in regards to the application by the Arrowsmith Brewing Company for a lounge license. And I have submitted letters, which I believe you've all received, and also... Yes, and with the petition from some of the neighbors in the immediate area there. And when I was looking over I sent a letter to the planning department asking what they had submitted to you so I could know what was happening. And there was a few things in there that bothered me. And one of them was about it seems like they just got the application to open up. And now they just opened up, and now they wanted, within a week, wanted a liquor license to have a lounge. They're saying it's a lounge, and a lounge is a very quiet place. However, what I'm trying to say is that now they're wanting to add, according to their letter to you, have music, entertainment, and that's not a lounge. That's a bar or a pub or any word you want to call it by. A place that serves alcohol is still a bar or a lounge or a pub or whichever word you want to use. The majority of the people in Shellybrook, a lot of them have been there for well over 20 years. A great amount of them are over the age of 80. The majority of them, including myself, usually go to bed about 9 o'clock at night. I am over 70 myself. The traffic along Stanford is increased so drastically, I now refer to it as 19B. Getting in and out of the area, making a left-hand turn, is almost impossible because of the speeding of the traffic on Stanford. The noise carries from when they were putting in all their equipment. I couldn't figure out what the noise I was hearing. It was metal scraping, beeping sounds, and we're talking 11 to 12 o'clock at night. And all of a sudden one day I see that sign, here's this brewery. So I finally figured that it was all their equipment that they were installing, but it woke me up. The noise carries right across the street, and a lot of the people in the Shellybrook area, because they are aged people, I think they deserve some due consideration before this license is issued to the brewing company to install a lounge there for 45 people. I just do not feel it's an appropriate area for a lounge, and that it probably should be relocated either downtown or out towards the industrial center, someplace where it's not going to affect the surrounding area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
thanks very much. Any other items, any other questions that are on tonight's agenda from members of the audience? Okay, we'll commence in a few moments at 6 o'clock. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 15th regular meeting of Council. The City of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. First item I have on the agenda tonight is the minutes of the Council meeting held May the 1st. I need a mover and a seconder for those to accept those minutes. So I have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Beal, seconded by Councillor Salter. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll call all those in favor. Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. The next item is the recommendation on the May 15th Council meeting agenda be approved. I have a mover and a seconder for the agenda. Moved by Councillor Oates, seconded by Councillor Burton. Are there any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. We have three delegations this evening. The first one is Ballina Secondary School, the Vimy Ridge trip. Who is here on their behalf? I'm sorry, I don't have a name, so could you identify yourself, please?
John Preston.
Okay, great, John. Hi, welcome. Do you want to turn the microphone on, please?
Yeah. And as I said, I was here with a couple of my students, my daughter Julie Preston, who also accompanied us, and Sophie Gooch. And I wanted to give you a brief presentation of what we did, and then, of course, to thank you, because Council generously donated some monies towards our trip. And I'll show you what we did with that. So, as you know, this was the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Vimy Ridge, which many people consider to be a coming of age of Canada. We were only 50 years old at the time, and I decided to offer this opportunity to a small group of students from Bolinas to accompany me there. I was a former guide, so I know it quite well, and I thought it would be a wonderful opportunity for them to partake in a bit of Canadian history. So here's what we did. Our itinerary was 17 days. A couple of days were flying, of course, and then we had 5 days in London, 5 days in the Arras region, and then 5 days elsewhere in France, which included Normandy and Paris. So in London, here's my entire group. As you can see in the top right-hand corner, there was 15 students, myself, and another teacher, Miss Conforton. And we thoroughly enjoyed London. Of course, you can see some of the things we went to were HMS Belfast, the Churchill War Rooms, which had pertinence to the wars, and then, of course, other tourist attractions like St. Paul's Cathedral and Tower Bridge and Greenwich, Halley's Observatory. And so it was quite a good experience for our students to do that, of course, to start, and to get acclimatized to the European bath, if you will, with an English language environment. And then from there, we flew down to France. My sister-in-law happens to be attached to the mayor's office in Saint-Nicolas-les-Arras, which is a suburb of Arras. And this is in the north of France, if you're not familiar with the area. It's where the Battle of Arras was held in April of 1917. My students, of course, got to meet a number of students that were attached to families in that area because they were staying with families, homestays, which allowed them the opportunity to get some of the cultural and linguistic immersion that they wouldn't have otherwise had in a hotel room. So they were invited to come to this ceremony where they were welcomed to Arras, were given some cake and food, and then visited some of the town. From there, of course, the next day was the exciting day. That was April the 9th, which is the 100th anniversary of the actual battle. We had volunteered, as a matter of fact, to be able to get onto the site earlier so I could show them areas of the site from when I was a tour guide. And we got great spots as a result, and we got access to the administrator's house and a nice meal there as well. So we thoroughly enjoyed that. And then, of course, at Vimy Ridge, we partook in the ceremony with our Prime Minister was there, the French President, the outgoing French President, Monsieur Hollande, and the three princes, Prince Charles, William, and Harry. So that was quite a day for us. We very, very much enjoyed it. It was quite hot. At that point, we didn't really need these jackets, but I'll speak to that later. And then, of course, we went and visited other sites pertaining to the two world wars. We went to the Newfoundland Memorial at Beaumont-Hamel, the ceremony for which the 100th anniversary was the year before, because it was the Battle of the Somme. Same with Thiepval. We explored some new areas. I got to see the two sites where my granduncles are buried as well. So I was very happy to be able to show that to my students. And then from there we went to Normandy and visited the Juno Beach Center, which were D-Day landings from 1944. And finally, we concluded our trip in Paris, which, of course, included all the major sites, the Eiffel Tower, the Arc de Triomphe, Notre Dame Cathedral, Sacré-Cœur, and Versailles. So we had a wonderful time, and it is in large part thanks to you, because, of course, you made a generous donation to our group, which we have then used to purchase said vests that we're wearing tonight, wonderful jackets and a couple of caps and maybe some pins. So, again, thank you, Council, for supporting us in our trip, and I hope you enjoyed our presentation.
Well, thanks very much, and thanks for coming to see us and telling us about the trip. Do any members of the council have any questions? Councillor Patterson and then Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Mr. President. I'm wondering if the two students can come up and I can ask them a couple questions as well.
Sure. Julie?
Thank you for coming. So I guess my question is, what would have been your highlight of the trip?
My highlight was definitely Vimy Day. Just being there and being able to be a part of the ceremony and volunteering was amazing because it made us feel like we were a part of something. Yeah.
How many people were in attendance
I think
at the time that you were there?
close to 25,000 were on the site that day.
I guess the same question.
Basically the same answer for me. I really enjoyed Juno Beach. I found that really touching to me. But also Vimy Ridge was the highlight for me. Same reasons.
Can I ask, you're both grade 12 students?
Grade 11.
Grade 11? And so what are some of the courses that you'll be taking next year? Did this affect any of your decisions for some of your course load next year?
For me, I was already interested in doing history courses, but it enforced that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For me, it made me want to partake in my father's new course, which is Global Studies,
Awesome.
which will incorporate all of that together.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank you for coming to let us know how it went, because, during those days I was thinking about the students that were over there, wondering how it was going and hoping that you would come and let us know. So I really appreciate that you did this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Beale.
There we go. Thank you. Yes, I'd just like to add, I had the opportunity to watch much of the ceremony as well as the preparations on television, and I found it extremely moving and was certainly thinking about you there. And I wonder if you had that same feeling being actually on site. Was it a moving experience, or was it, just so hot that that's all you could think about?
A bit of both. It was extremely moving. It was incredible to see the monument, and we actually were among the few people that actually got to stand on it that day because we were volunteering. We were there early. It was incredible. And then later in the day it got a bit unbearably hot, but
So I gather it must be awesome to see all of the grave markers that are there. Thousands, I guess, of young Canadian men and women that were buried there. I was watching it also, and I felt a connection because we knew you were there. So that's great. Any other members of council? Well, thank you very much for coming, and thank you for sharing that experience with us, and thank you for showing us the pictures. By the way, my ancestor came from Normandy in 1652. So if I had known where you were going, I would have asked you to go to that. I don't think you went there. It's Villiers-sur-Mer. I think it's in the Diocese of Lisieux. Next time you go, I'll let you know. Thank you. Thanks once again.
Thank you.
The next delegation we have is the Oceanside Division of Family Practice, and we have with us this evening Dr. Peter Hazlitt. I was going to say Alice or Hazlitt, I don't know why, and Sharon Todd. So if you want to come to the microphone, make yourself at home. And I think you've got some good news for us, so go right ahead.
Yeah, please. Yeah, that's good.
Please speak into the microphone. Don't be shy to pull the microphone closer.
Yeah, well, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the Council and residents, and thank you ever so much for inviting us. My name's Peter Haslett. I'm a GP from Qualicum, and I also masquerade as the co-chairman of the Oceanside Division of Family Practice. My colleague and co-presenter is Sharon Todd, who is the coordinator of the division's recruitment and retention programme. Now, we are very aware that the community is very aware of the lack of GPs and the difficulty that new residents are having in getting a family practitioner in Oceanside. This is a national problem. It's a provincial problem. It's also an island problem. And on the screen, we can show you the number of vacant jobs there are available, and in essence we in Parksville and we in Qualicum are competing against these communities for a limited number of available doctors. We do, however, have some good news. It's been bad news for quite a long time. Our doctors are getting older, just like their patients. They're not quite as old as the patients, but sometimes they feel that way. But we have good news. We've got two young, very committed physicians from the UK who are coming. They have apparently just bought a house in Parksville today, or so I am told. They certainly sounded very committed when I took them out for supper on Saturday night. I think they are likely to be here for a duration. I think they will be a big bonus. We need more of them. I think they were told that there is a very nice place when they were in Terrace called Parksville. It's not hard to be a nice place, I understand, if you're in Terrace. But we won't go there. Just to paint a little bit of a background picture, divisions of family practice are non-profit making community-based groups of family physicians run by a board of directors who are made up of local healthcare practitioners. There are 35 divisions in BC, and divisions are a conduit for communication between the Ministry of Health, health authorities, and the local jobbing family physician like myself. And the mandate of all members of the division is to work collaboratively with the health authority and the provincial general practice services committee to address gaps in the delivery of healthcare locally. And the first big project that divisions undertook was the GP for Me project. This was an initiative that was developed by doctors of BC. It was largely driven by fiscal studies that were commissioned by the Ministry of Health that showed there were huge savings to be made if you could attach every patient in BC to a family physician. Good longitudinal care saves money. It saves an awful lot of money. If my memory serves me correctly, if just 5% of the complex care patients in BC who are unattached could be attached, that would save $80 million a year in the health economy. It is big money. We're very aware at the division that there's a dearth of local family physician. We want, in particular, to try and encourage our existing family physicians to stay. Their big concerns are recruitment and retention. Their big concerns are succession, finding a GP to take over from them. They worry about finding a locum if they are ill. They worry about finding a locum so that they can go on holiday. Now, at the division, we have a small pool of locums now. We have, for instance, been able to organise a bit of cover for Dr. Henderson and Dr. Hancock's practice to buy a little bit of time over the summer to see if it's possible to resurrect this practice and keep it going in the autumn. As more of our colleagues as a whole in British Columbia get used to the concept of divisions, we're finding here that actually quite a lot of doctors retire to this area, and retiring doctors are approaching us. They do realise that they can offer us something with locums. They can work part-time and allow the incumbents to be ill, to have a holiday. And we hope that the division will become a little bit of a one-stop shop for local doctors coming to us and saying, I need a locum for this, that or the other, for succession and very much for recruitment. And on this point, I'll hand over to Sharon to take this a little bit further on.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks for having us tonight. I'm going off memory here. I can't see my notes, so I'm just going to be making a bit of this up. So my name is Sharon Todd, and my job is primarily recruitment and retention of physicians for the Oceanside Division of Family Practice. I spend most of my day working on that. You can see from this particular slide, how do we do it? It's a complex problem. There's not any easy answer. However, we work with our team, our board of family physicians. Dr. Haslett is one of our co-chairs, and we have several methods of getting information out to the GPs that are in areas looking for work. I won't bore you with the details of all of that, but our good news tonight being that David and Mirka Owen are joining us. I believe they'll be starting at the very beginning of October. They'd be here sooner if they could. They are young. They're super excited about raising their family here in Parksville. They plan on being here for, I believe they said today before I took them to the airport, 30 years. So they want to start a family. They're both physicians, so a married couple, and they'll both be starting at 2 different practices. Now, I hope that you can appreciate that we're not going to name those practices tonight, as it is their news to share, and they'll share that when they arrive and in the manner that they want to do that. So typically when we would get physicians come to town, if we find out that somebody is looking for work and we've got openings in Parksville and Qualicum, we would give them a tour. We roll out the red carpet, and that's not just us that does that. We rely on a whole lot of members of the community, including yourselves. So a typical tour might include a visit to the mayor's office. We would take them to the Oceanside Health Center to have a tour of the facilities, meet the medical director there, see what's available for care there. We would take them, obviously, to meet other physicians in the area, maybe just socially or just to speak to them. We would tour them around the clinics that matched and were most interested them and their needs, and just basically show them around. So it's a big job. We don't get to do it as often as we'd like, but we're hoping to change that. So the good news is that we're welcoming 2 new family physicians in the fall, and as Dr. Haslett was saying, we're hoping to organize as much care as we can to cover the Jensen Medical Clinic until then. And the not so good news is that, as you guys probably are aware, these physicians we're recruiting into a deficit. So these physicians are replacing one retiring physician, and these physicians are replacing an existing vacancy that's been around for a few months. So they're not brand new and joining the already huge pool of physicians we have, but we're working as hard as we can. So we have to do more, and I wanted you guys to know that there's people that work on this problem all the time. So there's people that work on this problem not just once a month or once every now and then. There's groups in this community. There's the Perfect Storm group. You've probably heard of them and worked with them. There's all manner of people working on this problem all the time, and we're thinking about it. We're working on it. We've got the practice support program. They're available to come and help GPs when they set up a practice, give them assistance in setting up. So we've got lots of resources available, and we're glad that we have you guys as well to be able to tour physicians around, maybe come and meet you. And we'd love it if you could meet the new physicians when they do get to town. I'm sure they'd like to go out for dinner with you. So we've got a little video here. You may have seen it before. This was produced by the Oceanside Division of Family Practice last summer. And it's a video that we're hoping to market digitally and get out to some doctors that might be looking. And we think that it highlights all the great areas of our community and all the things that we love about living in Oceanside. Super hoping I can play it for you.
Technology, it's great when it works.
Yeah, it's not really. The last one. It just needs to play. There we go. Thank you. Your laptop's not enabled. Oh well. Well, we do, but the technology's not on a laptop to be able to play it. At any rate,
It's a great video. It is a great
it's an awesome video, you guys.
Great video.
Is there an internet connection here? Like we can show it online? Is that okay to do? Yeah, there's a lot of viruses right now. Okay, thank you. Prince George. Not us. Look, you're getting a tour of all the divisions of family practice right now. Oh, you can see our website. Yeah.
We have to watch it now. We'll stay all night if it means finding it.
It's worth watching.
It really is quite awesome, if we do say so ourselves.
It's one of these undeniably attractive places where your first day here, you really start to understand why people want to live here.
Came to this area, met people who were doing things which were really more back to the land. For me, that was very grounding.
In terms of finding those balance elements, this place truly offers that unique opportunity.
This area has made me reclaim my life, I feel, a lot.
There's so many benefits to living on Vancouver Island. The natural amenities are spectacular and breathtaking. You can drive 45 minutes in any direction and be somewhere new and exciting.
The Oceanside area is diverse. It's a few towns and cities put together. So it goes in the Noose area, Parksville, Qualicum Beach, surrounding areas of Coombs, Arrington, and up to sort of Bowser. We're only 2 hours away from Long Beach, Tofino, and Hewlett. We're only an hour away from Mount Washington.
I love the fact that it's British Columbia. I love the fact that it's got mountains. I love the fact that it's got endless outdoor recreation opportunities. We like to promote mountain biking. We've put this trail network in. As you can see, it's pretty successful. People utilize the area a lot, and it's good.
From where I live and work, to be able to jump into a day of salmon fishing, it's a 10-minute drive down to the marina.
If you like sailing and you like exploring new places, this is one of the best sailing grounds in the world, bar none. Just this morning, I got to walk through one of the oldest Douglas fir forests in North America.
It really takes you back to that peaceful, tranquil place where you are thankful for everything that you have.
And that is the ultimate of island life.
Family life in the Oceanside area has been different than I expected. I was watching my two boys learn how to float around in the ocean. They get to be close to nature, they get to be close to the ocean, and they get to learn all about our local ecology.
It has been a fantastic place to raise our kids. They both have thanked us for raising them here.
The air's clean, the traffic is minimal, the cost of buying property here is probably half of what it is everywhere else.
One of the reasons we move here is because you like people, right? You want to have a smaller, closer-knit community. You get a lot of people yearning for that connection.
You do have access to the mainland, literally 20 minutes, and you're right downtown Vancouver.
We've got this easy access to urban centers, but at the same time, we're all connected, and we have the ability to live in a gorgeous atmosphere while still getting our work done.
Well, if you're thinking of locating to Oceanside, there's so many reasons. It's an incredibly beautiful place to live, but I think more importantly, it's a great place to work and to practice medicine.
I feel privileged to be a part of the medical community in this area. I have a really wonderful group of patients, and that is without doubt the most rewarding part of the practice.
Oftentimes you'll get gifts such as some of the seafood that your patient catches for you. Very kind of down-to-earth community with really great people in the area.
If a physician was thinking to relocate to Oceanside, they would be welcomed with open arms. There's a clear need for physicians in the communities. It would be a great place to build a practice and to build a business.
It's not a sleepy little town. It's a little town, but there's a lot going on. Some of it's structured, some of it we choose our own adventure, but the reality is that the adventure is on our doorsteps, and we take it in on a daily basis. It's truly part of the fabric of our life.
If you want a good lifestyle, this is definitely the place to be, but if you can't see what's here, then I can't help you.
Well, I'd certainly want to move here after watching that video. Well,
Didn't rain at all.
No.
I just wanted to point out, before we go any further, that I've informed Sharon that giving me a month or a month and a half's notice before they arrive, we intend to put on an orientation presentation for the city. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and council, and we're also interested in probably going out and sharing a meal where we can talk casually and get and find out what they might like to see more than we can show them in terms of taking them from place to place.
I think interaction with the mayoral office has been a hugely positive thing as far as people coming to look around the area is concerned. They're desperately impressed by that. That sits very well. I think one of the things we would like to talk about is things like providing housing, because that's becoming more of an issue for rentable housing to rent. I mean, not everybody, they're going to want to come and look. A lot of people, not the Owens, fortunately, but some people may well do, and that's getting increasingly difficult.
But we'll certainly do everything we can, and more, I hope. Any questions from members of council for the delegation? Councillor Salter and Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. I'm just wondering, still, what happens with physicians who are coming in as immigrants and who often don't end up being able to work as physicians. They end up as registered nurses and so on, or because they don't have the exact qualifications. I see that as a huge pool that we're missing out on somehow.
Well, I'm an immigrant physician, And basically, as an international medical graduate, you've got to be mentored until you have passed effectively the Canadian medical school exams. So you can't work on your own as a doctor. You've got to work alongside somebody until you've got those extra qualifications, the Canadian qualifications. I mean, Canada, as you know, is the most politically correct country on earth, I suspect. And you know what they want a doctor from Timbuktu to show they can do, then a doctor from the USA must be able to do, show the same thing. So I don't think there's any way you can get around that. Certainly the Owens will be mentored to begin with, and any doctor can agree to mentor someone, and obviously it's very easy. It's in all our best interest to act as mentors until they've got the requisite qualifications. One of the big difficulties that there's been recently in British Columbia is that the South Africans have been hemorrhaging their doctors, and the South African Medical Association has refused to certificate their doctors, allowed the certification to be outside the country. So if you go into rural BC, you'll find it's largely populated by South African physicians, and now, just in the last couple of years, that source has been cut off because the College of Physicians and Surgeons is not in a position to give people jobs when they haven't got the necessary certification to show that they're doctors in their own country. So they're beginning to get way round that by simply having people come over and work very much alongside a physician, very, very, very close together. So the indigenous Canadian doctor can get a good idea in 3 months as to the capabilities of a physician, and South Africa is the case in point. But it is very difficult, and that's left a big hole for BC to cover. I've been told that other provinces are not quite so heavy-handed on this score, but I think it's very difficult for the college. Would you want somebody practicing who actually doesn't turn out to have a license back home? Very difficult.
So just a couple things. So there must be testing or exams or something that there has to be it's like they write board exams that would that not?
Yeah, so you effectively do your board exams when you come over as an international medical graduate, but you've got to be in the system for a certain length of time to do those. Once you've got those exams, then you're free to do whatever you want. But there are no constraints put upon you. Let's put it like this.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for your presentation, and thank you for the work that you do. I've been a member of the Perfect Storm group for a while now, and spent time touring medical clinics in other jurisdictions, and taking a look at some of the impediments to doctors coming and locating. And I'm confident we'll get through this, and I know that you have our support in things. If there are things that need to be done that we can do as a group, we're certainly happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's another member of the Perfect Storm Committee. I think the last time we saw you was about 7 o'clock in the morning last Friday. That's too early for me, but anyway, luckily they're not held every day, every morning. We all know that medicine and doctors, it's an economic driver. The City of Parksville has been very supportive from the get-go, and we continue to be supportive. And anything that we can do to help, you just have to pick up the phone and call. We'd be delighted, and I look forward to hearing from Sharon when the doctors are ready to arrive into town, and we'll certainly give them a full appreciation of Parksville and what there is and where it is and how it is and all those other good things. Okay?
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for coming. Our third delegation this evening is Radcliffe Development Corporation, And Mr. Garwin Wirtz is here. So, Mr. Wirtz, you have the microphone, and you have 10 minutes. Over to you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, and staff, my name is Garwin Wirtz of Radcliffe Development Corporation. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening to present our application for development permit and development variance permit for 272 Island Highway West, a project that we plan to name 100 Lombardy Street. There's a growing global consensus that a triple bottom line approach should be applied when evaluating success in land use planning and governance. This approach balances the social, environmental, and economic values equally rather than sacrificing one element to satisfy the other. Some people refer to this holistic approach as the three-legged stool, where there should be equal focus on all three elements to achieve stable and successful outcomes. This concept also has temporal element guiding equity across generations, including the health and well-being of future generations. The development permit area guidelines require applicants to demonstrate how they are considering, incorporating, and implementing sustainability principles into their development. Development permits are a key tool for the city in regulating how lands are developed to provide benefit to the community as a whole. Three tools contained in the OCP offers to achieve greener communities include local governments now have expanded authority to establish DPAs in order to reduce the environmental impacts of developments and promote energy conservation, water conservation, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Local governments are permitted to reduce off-street parking requirements where developers are proposing to incorporate sustainability principles and are providing options for transportation alternatives. And local governments may exempt small unit housing developments from DCCs where the developer is proposing greenhouse gas reduction strategies, affordable housing, and/or compact forms of development. The proposed project is a redevelopment of the Post and Lantern property, 28-unit motel and restaurant, boarded up in 2008. The buildings were deconstructed and the property officially rezoned to Comprehensive Development CD24 in 2016. The zoning permits mixed commercial residential use and is subject to commercial and mixed-use development permit area number 3. Residential, commercial, and mixed-use building formats are all supported in this designation with the purpose of revitalization, form and character, energy and water conservation, and reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Implication for assessed values. 2016 property tax notice was $13,700. The proposed development will increase the annual notice to an estimated $140,000. The proposed development will provide approximately $176,000 in frontage works and $564,000 in development cost charges for the City of Parksville and RDN for water, sewer, drainage, roads, and parkland. An aerial view moving through Parksville along Highway 19A toward the west side of the downtown. The subject site is located at the corner of Highway 19A and Lombardy Street, a prime property in the City of Parksville. highly visible, and ideally suited as a gateway development. As mentioned, the site is contained in commercial and mixed-use development permit area number 3, which is intended to be attractive to both residents and visitors alike and address compatibility with surrounding uses. Commercial and mixed-use development permit area number 3 includes a mix of automobile-oriented services, tourist accommodation, and service industrial uses, along with a mix of multi-unit residential development. This area is noted as being highly visible along major roadways. As such, it is desirable that this area should provide an aesthetically pleasing presentation of Parksville. The objective of the designation is to revitalize the appearance of the area through promotion of architectural particulars and landscape design. Subject site is 3,040 square meters, irregular shaped, with approximately 90 meters of frontage on Lombardy Street, 53 meters of frontage on Highway 19A, and 32 meters of frontage on Morrison Avenue. The site is not in close proximity to environmentally sensitive land, ecological habitats, or public parkland. The proposed mixed-use development consists of 29 residential strata units, 2-bedroom plus den floor plans ranging from 102 to 140 square meters, above 600 square meters of ground floor commercial and concrete parking structure. The building design is influenced by the elongated site, oriented north-south, and 3-meter sloping topography. The high quality of architecture will provide an aesthetically pleasing presentation at the corner of Highway 19A and Lombardy Street, a gateway to the downtown west side. Building height, form, setbacks, and density comply with the mixed-use CD24 zoning regulations. The residential component is set back a minimum 6 meters along the east property from the neighboring multifamily residential and step back 4 meters above ground level commercial to reduce massing from the street view on Highway 19A. Large balconies, low-slope roof lines, and deep overhangs form a unified and cohesive contemporary West Coast design with large windows that create a light, transparent structure. Covered walkways along each commercial space and the residential entrances provide weather protection for pedestrians. Crime prevention through environmental design principles have been considered to help prevent crime and increase public safety in the neighborhood. Residential and commercial units face the street to promote casual supervision of sidewalks. The project will be registered built green, adopting forward-thinking building techniques that are sustainable and environmentally friendly. Consideration will be given to the environmental impact that the development has on the site and surrounding lands. Initiatives to reduce stormwater runoff, reduce water use, reduce energy use, improve indoor air quality, and utilize materials and services that promote environmental leadership. The project will be privately developed for market housing to meet the diverse needs and preferences of the local and incoming population for singles, families, and retirees. The exterior building colors are designed to reflect natural coastal elements and grays, wood, and light tones that complement the architectural form and character. Exposed concrete with cast reveal lines, steel I-beam in dark gray, glazing, aluminum storefront and clear anodized finish, hardy paneling and siding, off-white, dark gray, and medium brown, corrugated metal siding, silver, fascia and wood trim, stained dark gray, and signage for commercial units mounted below overhead canopy or fastened to the face of the steel I-beam where applicable. Looking at the north elevation along Highway 19A and below the south elevation on Morrison Avenue. The architectural landscape incorporates ecological design principles and gardens that provide the appearance of natural green space and welcoming and nurturing habitat for people, animals, and insects. Drought-resistant native plants along with automated underground low-drip irrigation and soil moisture sensors will minimize water consumption. Design includes native deciduous and evergreen trees throughout the property to provide a landscape buffer and screening between the adjacent properties, together with solar shading for outdoor pedestrian seating and walking areas. A woodland garden along the east property features a walking path with deciduous and evergreen trees, finished with grasses, perennials, shrubs, and permeable ground cover as an absorbent infiltration facility to capture rainwater. To minimize non-essential impervious surfaces, the design includes structural planter boxes along Lombardy Street containing a paint box of plants and vibrant colors. The landscape features a public bench combined bike rack at the corner of Lombardy and 19A to promote social interaction, and a welcoming arrival at the Lombardy Street intersection for residents and visitors. A plan view of the bench showing seating and the slots for bikes. Section view showing scale and people sitting on the architectural metal bench with its coastal sea kelp design. Looking at the site and parking plan, the development contains 18 surface parking spaces plus 35 parking spaces in the parkade. The servicing agreement also includes 11 parking spaces on Lombardy Street and 1 loading drop-off space directly adjacent the site. Our application includes variances to Division 400 parking bylaw to reduce the off-street parking by 11 spaces, eliminate the off-street loading space, and 0 setback for surface parking fronting Highway 19A. A transportation engineer from Watt Consulting Group reviewed the proposed mixed-use development and provision of the off-street parking and loading requirements. The engineer stated that providing the loading space on-street allows for the functional requirements of the bylaw to be achieved without impeding on the existing layout of the site. Safer, more visible, and accessible on-street, it provides better accommodation for loading and drop-off needs of the commercial and residential components. The design of the development retains the location of the existing vehicle entrance on Highway 19A and overlay of the existing parking. Design and width of drive aisles would not allow for setback of these parking spaces. Under Division 400 parking bylaw, the proposed development requires 44 spaces for the residential component and 20 spaces for the commercial or retail component. As noted, our application includes a variance request to reduce off-street parking by 11 spaces. The transportation engineer compared parking requirements of similar mixed-use developments, as well as the impact of being in close proximity to the downtown. In Zoning Bylaw Division 400, where a property is located in the downtown, parking requirements are reduced by 50%. As shown in Figure 1, the site is within walking distance, about 155 meters from the downtown core area. Due to the site's close proximity, its urban and travel characteristics can be described as comparable to a site that is directly within the downtown core. The site also provides access to alternative modes of transportation easily accessible to the downtown for those residents who may not own or need a vehicle or wish to reduce greenhouse gas emissions generated by on-road transportation. Cycling, an alternative to vehicle use, is facilitated around the site by an existing and proposed networks. Morrison Avenue is a proposed bike trail, and nearby McMillan Street is a designated bike route. Also, Radcliffe has contributed $1,200 to future bike route line painting and will be providing bike racks at the corner of Lombardy Street and Highway 19A. Another alternative to vehicle use is public transit. Route 88, Parksville stops on Hearst Avenue, approximately 170 meters from the site, provides service to major destinations in Parksville, including downtown, schools, shopping centers. Route 91, intercity stops on Island Highway adjacent the site and provides service to Qualicum Beach and Lanceville. The site also has a walk score of 81, suggesting that it's very walkable and most errands can be accomplished on foot. Morrison Avenue has a continuous sidewalk to the downtown, and Highway 19A has sidewalks on both sides of the road. Radcliffe will be constructing sidewalks on Lombardy Street, a requirement of the servicing agreement, and includes significant landscaping along all fronts of the development to improve the walkability and pedestrian experience. In analyzing the site's parking requirements, the transportation engineer obtained vehicle ownership data from ICBC for comparable developments in Nanaimo, having similar characteristics as the subject site, including their relative proximity to the downtown. Average vehicle ownership is 0.9 vehicles per unit. The study also observed average visitor parking demand to be 0.3 vehicles per unit. Combining the two, the expected total parking demand rate is 1.1 vehicles per unit for the residential component. The transportation engineer also collected data for retail commercial sites close to the boundary of Parksville's downtown core at their peak period. Observations resulted in average parking demand of 1 vehicle per 46 square meters of gross floor area. The traffic engineer's review suggests that parking demand will be 32 vehicles for residents, 3 vehicles for visitors, and 13 vehicles for retail, a total of 48 vehicles. Notably, surface parking spaces can be shared amongst retail and residential visitors. Their final recommendation that the proposed parking supply of 53 spaces will accommodate the expected demand of 48 vehicles. In demonstrating sustainability principles and initiatives to lower greenhouse gas emissions, the proposed project will meet all of the smart growth principles outlined in the official community plan. The development is mixed commercial residential use, apartment building format, which is the highest form of compact housing and density. In close proximity to the downtown, provides multimodal transportation choices, walking, biking, and public transit, and reduce commuting distances to help lower the community's greenhouse gas emissions generated by on-road transportation. Provides market housing in close proximity to the downtown, is an infill development and does not require any new municipal infrastructure, has zero impact to parks and open space, has zero impact on farmlands, will be registered built green to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from buildings and promote energy and water conservation, is highly compatible with surrounding commercial and residential apartment properties, and provides connectivity and open spaces for public interaction. In closing, the intended project is uniquely appropriate for the subject site, meeting the OCP's sustainability principles, land use policies, and development permit area guidelines. Building height, form, setbacks, and density comply with the mixed-use CD24 zoning regulations. A variance request to reduce off-street parking and one loading space has been reviewed by transportation professionals who concluded parking and loading space requirements will easily be accommodated. The proposed Lombardy Street infill and redevelopment will enhance the aesthetics, a gateway to the downtown west side. The intended project will provide the highest quality of architectural design to create pedestrian-friendly and attractive streetscapes that invigorate and respect the existing neighborhood, provide livable, vibrant spaces for singles, families, and retirees, promote social interaction in a village-like setting, and provide eyes on the street for a safer neighborhood. The proposed development will support downtown revitalization with high-density residential by increasing the number of people living in close proximity as these residents look to the downtown for consumer goods and services. The proposed development will generate $140,000 in annual property tax revenue for the City of Parksville and $740,000 in frontage works and development cost charges without requiring additional municipal roads and servicing. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Wirtz, for a very thorough and informative presentation. I'm now going to turn it over to members of council, knowing that the next item on the agenda from Mr. Russell will be this very project. Any questions for Mr. Wirch? I rather suspect you've answered. If anybody had any questions, you probably answered them. Thank you once again for coming, and thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate it. Well, this evening we're going to dedicate it to Mr. Russell because I think you've got all the reports, Mr. Russell, as well as being acting CAO. So I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder for the recommendations coming up. Moved by Councillor Oates, seconded by Councillor Burden. And it's the development variance permit and development permit application for mixed-use commercial residential building 272 Island Highway. Mr. Russell.
Yes, Your Worship, if I may. A couple minor things to add, but not a whole lot after the presentation.
It's a hard act to follow.
Yes. Before Council this evening is consideration whether or not to advance the development variance permit to public input. There's also a development permit application where it's recommended that consideration of the development permit be deferred until the notice and the follow-up development variance permit report has come forward, as the development permit as proposed is dependent upon those variances occurring. As noted in the applicant's presentation, the property is in development permit area number 3 for mixed-use development. The form and characters of the building were designed by a professional architect, as was the landscaping. At this point in time, there appears to be sufficient information to proceed with notice to allow for consideration of the variance upon that input from the public.
Okay, Councillor Burden, questions for Mr. Russell, and who's next? Councillor Salter? Anybody else? Councillor Patterson. All right. Go ahead, Councillor Burden.
So we've got two processes going. We've got a variance and a development permit application. Can we run those two concurrently? Is there a, you know what I'm asking for?
If I may, Your Worship, they actually are being processed concurrently. It's just that the permit issuance itself is being delayed until the time that the development variance permit issuance is also occurring. Thank you.
Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Mr. Russell. I'm just wondering about the parking issue, though, with regard to the parking spots as required in the OCP, which is, of course, part of this variance. Will that be addressed through the public input, or?
If I may, Your Worship, yes, through the development variance permit process, what staff are seeking are permission to go out and seek that input to basically advertise. We do mail notification in the case of variance permits within 50 meters of the subject property, and so we're seeking Council's permission to do that. The other alternative for Council is to not proceed with the variance, but that would bring the proposal back to the drawing board with respect to its design.
Okay, yes, follow up. Thank you. Because so what I'm noting is this is a high density building which is being promoted in this city, and so the fact that we're promoting high density, I guess fair enough. However, when we're doing that, then I guess there's this other piece that comes with high density, and that's these folks need to get around, and so that would, in my mind, be parking. And so hoping folks are going to jump on a bus or take a bicycle, maybe they will and maybe they won't, but the parking still needs to be available to them as well as the commercial pieces there. So I'm having difficulty forwarding this.
If I may, Worship, through to Councillor Salter. So the proponent has had their traffic professional do an assessment of what the needs for the proposal are once it's fully built out. They've assessed that the needs are less than the parking that they're providing on site. And then in addition to the parking that happens to be on the subject property, there's 11 additional parking spaces on the street. So the on-site parking itself, based on their professionals' recommendations, are less than, they're providing more parking than their demand is actually showing that they need on the property itself.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship, to Mr. Russell. After our vote and everything tonight on the variance, how long will it be until the consideration of the development permit will come back before council?
If a mayor worship, we estimate that it'd be approximately a month for both of them to come back to council.
Thank you.
Any questions from anyone else before I call the vote? All those in favor of the recommendations? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Okay. The next report is again for Mr. Russell. I need a mover and a seconder for the consideration of application for lounge endorsement to be added to the existing manufacturer license held by Arrowsmith Brewing. Moved by Councillor Beale, seconded by Councillor Burton. Mr. Russell, would you please give us the background on this particular item?
Sure. If I may, Your Worship, an opportunity for receiving written comment sufficient to address the licensing requirements of neighborhood input has been provided. A notice sign was posted on the front of the premises on Friday, April the 7th, 2017. In addition, 2 newspaper ads were placed, one in the Thursday, April the 20th, 2017, and Tuesday, April 25th editions of the Parksville Qualicum Beach News. A time for submitting written comments was provided until 4 p.m. on Friday, April the 28th. As upon that date, there was 6 correspondence received. I believe, sorry, I was trying to find there were three in support of the endorsement, 3 appeared in opposition of the endorsement. One of the 3 correspondents in opposition of the endorsement contained a petition representing 24 individuals. In addition, there was comment collected by the proponent that contained 603 signatures, some of which were addressed supporting the expansion of services at the establishment. In the staff report, an analysis is provided in Schedule A of the report, which is attached to informing part of the report, and it requires that Council consider in its deliberations to the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch the impact of noise on the community in the immediate vicinity of the establishment, the impact on the community if the application is approved, and in providing those comments to the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch, it needs to consider the location of the establishment, the capacity and hours of liquor service of the establishment. The recommendations are as per the agenda. I will remind Council that Council is, in a sense, providing an endorsement of either support or not support to the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch, and that it is ultimately the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch that just determines whether or not to issue a liquor license.
You have the final say. Okay. Members of Council, any questions for Mr. Russell? Being none, I'm going to call the vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Your hand went up late.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, Mr. Russell, in the application, I note on page 59 of the agenda that the hours of liquor service that are in the application are 10 to 10, 7 days a week. I'm just curious, are there situations in which someone might apply for this license and have reduced hours some of the days of the week and the maximum hours the other days, or is that something that we could consider asking?
If I may, Your Worship, through to Councillor Beale, often establishments will not necessarily operate within the full hours that they've requested of the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch every single day of the week. That's the maximum that they could operate under the condition of that license.
What?
I can appreciate that, and I also do imagine that, you know, with a fairly small establishment, it might not be going this late. But I am wondering if showing, you know, reduced hours some of the week, let's say Sunday to Wednesday or whatever it was, might go a long way to alleviate some of the concerns of the immediate neighbors. So I'm just wondering if that might be something that somehow ask about.
Certainly, as far as what the proponent has proposed at this point in time, those are the hours that they've applied to the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch. If Council wanted to indicate something as part of their in support of with conditions, it'd be up to the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch, how they accept that consideration. And obviously, I can't speak for the Liquor Control Licensing Branch to know what their their position would be on that.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just make a couple comments because I'm very familiar with the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch. I do special occasion licenses probably 3 or 4 times a month in addition to having my own liquor license. Now, I'll just give an example so that you can understand that my liquor license is from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. I will never serve alcohol before 11, and we're only open till 5 or 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night. So my liquor license, I went for the maximum amount of hours, but it definitely isn't used, which is what I'm assuming that Mount Arrowsmith Brewing Company is kind of looked at when they've thought about their hours and what they would like is their maximum. Does that help some of that?
Any question?
I don't have a question.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Salter. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I don't have an issue with a lounge, but I do have an issue with how this city addresses noise complaints, because we don't. Right now, we've been dealing since last November with folks who have complained about noise that's been going on. They can't sleep. They can't stand the smell of the diesel. They're living across the road from the noise that's been going on, and it's been round and round and round. Oh, we're going to deal with this and deal with that. And in the end, what we got was, here's the information. Our bylaws do not get received a call from the bylaw officer, but the news is not good. They're saying that they're conducting their business, no bylaw that they're going to pursue. So they're basically saying that even though we have bylaws in place, they're not good enough to address the fact that there's noise across the street from them, keeping them up all night. And we all know that we live in a community that is mostly seniors, and so seniors aren't up until midnight. They're going to bed early. So this is disturbing people, and again, the city's done nothing. So it really isn't about the business. The business does whatever they do, and it's about how the city addresses it, and we don't. We have people that have complained about the noise from Beach Fest to the point where they've been leaving town to get away from the noise. They're told, whatever, there's just you two, and you don't count. So for me, I can't support it because I know that the city won't do anything when people are kept up all night, or when people are not getting to sleep, or their windows are open and they've got diesel coming through their window. We won't do anything because we're going to say our bylaws we don't have bylaws strong enough to assist you. That's what we're going to say. So unless we can get some kind of a change in the hours, and 10 to 10 means it's 10 to 10. If it's going to be 10 to 7, then let's go 10 to 7 and look at it as a 10 to 7. I would like to see this be referred and look at changing up the hours of operation so that we're not impacting the residents who live nearby. Because we're not going to be able to help them when they need it.
I don't think that there's all that many people complaining about noise from where I sit as mayor. But anyway, be that as may, Councillor Burton.
You've had people come to council, to coffee with the mayor, and they've spoke to you, so you know what's happening.
Been a few people, yeah. Councillor Burton.
Through you to Director of Planning. The list of the petition that we received today, which indicated a number of addresses in the immediate area, certainly not all of them, that were in support. Is that the 603 that you referred to, and is that part of the public record?
If I may, worship, through to Councillor Burton, no correspondence has been distributed by staff as part of this proceeding. All correspondence that were collected as of the Friday the 28th were referred to council, with one exception. There was a package that was received and does form part of the public record of the 200-page item that was submitted by the proponent.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Oates.
Thank you, Worship. I'm not sure if we have the ability to answer this question in this room because maybe it's for the Liquor Control Board. But were we to grant this request, to provide that endorsement, and the Liquor Control Board grant this request, and that at some time in the future the proponent decide they want to expand their hours, would that be something that would be subject to council's approval? That's one question. And number two, the other thing we're being asked to do is to include, to endorse it being the addition of the lounge aspect to the existing business. And while the proponent has indicated in the correspondence there that they will only be serving craft beers there, does not the effect of becoming a lounge ultimately give them the ability to serve hard liquor as well, notwithstanding their indications that they would not be doing that?
Mr. Russell.
So if I may, Your Worship, so they are applying for the, basically they currently have a manufacturer's license that allows them to manufacture their beer, and as part of that they're allowed, I believe, to provide one 12-ounce sample of beer. They're seeking a license, in addition to their license, to allow for the lounge endorsement. The lounge endorsement would allow them to operate the liquor establishment within the hours shown. With respect to the serving of different types of alcohol, I don't know.
What about Councillor Oates' question with regards to the requirement? Would the Liquor Commission have to come back?
If I may, Your Worship, so one point of clarification. So Council would just be, again, providing an endorsement, not an approval. Again, it'd be the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch. But they can change the regulatory framework. So they could change the if they're based on their current regulations, a change in the hours of their license, of this type of license. My understanding is that they would need to come before Council for that change.
Okay. Councillor, have you had a question yet? Okay, Councillor Burden.
This is a craft brewery, which is a sector of the liquor industry which is growing in leaps and bounds, and is growing actually in this area. I think we've got 3 or 4 of them now. Seems to me that locating in an industrial setting, a light industrial setting, is an appropriate area for this kind of activity. Excuse me. These types of business are good for business in general in the community. They bring people to our community. It's part of our tourism sector. It's part of a number of other economic sectors that will benefit from this. The Liquor Control Act is, in my opinion, archaic at best, and in determining how to deal with these kinds of operations. It's similar to a winery where they have tastings and where they have various events to promote their product. I think this is a great thing for our community, and having seen I know that there are some people that are opposed to this, but I'm also seeing a significant number of people that are supporting it, and I will support this.
Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Your Worship. And yes, I'd like to add that I did have the opportunity to tour the facility and see the front tasting room, and it's really a lovely little spot there. I noted that in the application that they are planning to be, the 10 o'clock end, which is not completely unreasonable. But also that through staff training and otherwise, the intent is certainly to keep a fairly quiet establishment when people leave. I hope that there will also be some sort of signage to remind patrons that we don't want to be disturbing neighbors across the road. And I don't know if there are any other things that can be done to buffer any noise from vehicles if there are issues as they occur. But also I noticed that there were some concerns raised about parking, and yet My understanding of that particular site is that many of the other businesses that are there close up around 5 o'clock and so on. So if there are evening people going there in the evening, there should be, I would think, ample parking. I noticed that the maximum number of people for the area is 45, but I think that would be pretty crowded in there. I imagine it would be generally be a smaller crowd. So this is certainly something that I'd like to see in our area. I think it's lovely to see a craft brewery setting up in our area. I certainly hope that if this does go ahead and they get a permit, that the noise is really kept to a minimum and that neighbors aren't disturbed, and they'll find it a lot quieter than when the building itself, when the establishment was set up, which I gather from a number of people was quite noisy.
In speaking with the Tourism Association, I know that they're advocating, following up on Councillor Burton's comments about ale tours, and I gather that the ale tours, if I'm not mistaken, are done in the daytime. They're not done at night. So that would be where maybe 15 or 20 people might come at the same time. Okay, we've discussed this. Councillor Salter, one more question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, my question is to Rob. Would you be willing, or would you consider closing earlier if you were impacting the community? Rob?
You're sitting in the up.
Well, I think as Teresa mentioned, that when you applied to the liquor control branch, you put down. We could have put down 9 to 1 a.m. in the morning, but we put down maximum hours because if we come back again, it is another application. If you want to extend the hours of opening for another hour, another 15 minutes, requires another application. So certainly, we prefer to keep the application half the 10 to 10 because we don't want to have to come back and make another application and do the additional. And I mean, the other thing is too, we can't, currently our applications with, this would, if we were to out, we would actually have to go back to them. Our feeling is that there's not going to be an issue because the size of the facility is probably more than the occupancy of the maximum allowance, which was fire marshal allowance on the site. Back again and reapply to the state now.
But would you consider closing earlier if you were impacting the community? If the 10 o'clock was somehow impacting, like what time do you plan on?
Well, right now our hours are 11:30 till 7.
Right.
During the week and 11:30 till 9:30. Friday and Saturday night. Currently, we do not anticipate changing. That's adequate hours for us at this time.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay, I'm going to call, Councillor Oates.
Thank you, Your Worship. So public notice was given of the intent for this application on the 7th of April, and we have in front of us all the correspondence we've received as a result of that notice having been given.
If I may, Your Worship, we received all the correspondence that were submitted as of that date and time.
Okay. Because what I read here, I'm not reading what other people are reading, that it's an issue of time. I think that there's generally the community is in support of it except for one group, but it seems to me that they just don't want it there at all. Not like the letter that we received. The letter that we received from the group does not speak to alternative hours, just that in general it's not acceptable. and that a lounge in an area is not suitable. So altering the hours may look like we're doing something to assist those folks, but I don't think it really assists what those folks really are concerned about. However, given the volume of the correspondence that we got that seems to strongly outweigh the opposition to it, I think it's something that should be welcomed in this town, and I have full confidence that any issues with respect to noise will be handled. As a councillor that lives in this city, we don't seem to have a problem with getting our complaints dealt with in a timely manner. There are some people that may not be happy with the response that they get. However, you cannot have a residential designation on one side of the street and a commercial designation on the other side of the street and somehow decree that the noise does not cross the center line. Those things are going to happen when those things butt up against each other. It's a sign of a developing town. I applaud the proponent for doing something that I've heard an awful lot of people say they want to have in this town, and I look forward to them being successful.
Okay, on that note, thank you, Councillor Oates. I'm going to call Councillor Salter one more time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I do want to speak to what Councillor Oates just said. In fact, we did receive quite a bit of correspondence. I know I received it, so I'm pretty sure if I got it, everyone else did. And yes, they did speak about hours of operation and time frames. But really, I'm not concerned about really that. My concern is how this city addresses noise complaints from the community. That's where my issue is. It's really not with the lounge. I think it's kind of a neat idea. So that my concern really is how this city, which we don't deal with it. So how do we manage it with the proponent, because that's the only person who's going to deal with it. It won't be the city, because our bylaws apparently don't address anything that's a commercial business. So that's where my concern is. It's not particularly anything wrong with having a lounge in the city. And Councillor Oates, you wouldn't know this, but that those buildings and that trailer park has been there for years, well over 30 years. And so that didn't just happen. So the people that have been living there for a long, long time. So that's my issue, is that my concern is the city's addressing it. That's my concern. So I don't know, Mr. Russell, I mean, is there anything we can do about that? Until now, we haven't. Well, what can we do as the city if there is an issue?
Councillor Salter, I'm going to say another thing about noise. In our town, I don't hear from people, hundreds and hundreds of people that are complaining about noise. I've heard of some people, but it's not a big issue. It's not an overwhelming irritant for the majority of people in the city of Parksville.
And the reason
some
being,
people will always be upset by noise, traffic noise, whatever, motorcycle noise, whatever.
Mr. Mayor, the reason that there's people that are irritated in pockets about noise is because they're living beside there. Yeah, so people that don't live there don't hear it. It's the people that are living beside it that hear it. They're the ones that complain. It might be a small subdivision, a small group, a trailer park. That's why we don't hear it in hundreds and hundreds of people.
I'm going to call the vote. I think we've had enough discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? So that's no. You're not opposed. Okay. So we have that recorded. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on. Mr. Russell, once again, I need a mover and a seconder for the consideration of a development permit for a water treatment plant, workshop, storage shed, parking area, and landscaping at 1116 Herring Gull Way. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Oates. Mr. Russell, if you would, please.
For council consideration this evening is consideration of issuance for a development permit for the water treatment buildings at the city's industrial property. They're principally in a form and character development permit area. The recommendations are as per the agenda, and the development permit is attached for council's consideration.
Okay, fairly straightforward. I've read the report. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Russell? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Okay, once again, the Parksville Community Garden Society lease agreement. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Moved by Councillor Salter, seconded by Councillor Beal. Mr. Russell, once again, it's your night.
If Your Worship, for a number of years, the city has authorized informally a community garden on property beside the former jiu-jitsu building that the city owned on McVickers Street. And there's been no sort of formal agreement in place, which isn't good practice. And so in reviewing the circumstance, the CAO, in reviewing it, has put together a lease agreement to formalize those arrangements moving forward. They're fully detailed in the staff report, and the recommendations are as per the recommendations section.
Any questions for Mr. Russell? Seeing none, I'm going to call. Look, you have a question? Microphone, please.
With regard to the water, I did speak to Peter about that. And so basically he says that there are 23 garden members. They're all seniors. They all live in Parksville. That they do provide food to the food bank from the food from the garden. Some members also give food to their neighbors to help them out. Part of this is a socialization thing for members, and I mean the Parksville City actually encouraged people to plant plots in the community garden. So it was kind of us inviting people to do it, which then they took us up on it. So there's a lot of socialization going on, which is really important for seniors, and especially helps keep them. It keeps their minds healthy as well as their bodies, because they're outside, they're gardening, they're not stuck, in their apartments. And he said that it's led to very long time friendships between and among the folks who are gardening there. The water issue that was brought up was they are already paying $35 for the water. So what's happening is this would be doubling it for them. So
You said they're already paying for their water?
Yeah, they already pay $35 for their water. So yeah.
Wait.
So then another 35.
Staff, can you help me with this? Let's get this confirmed. Are they paying for water? Not to my knowledge.
They're paying.
If I may, Worship, they have not paid for water to date.
They're paying $35, and then another 35 would then be 70. Yeah.
Clarification, it's to the society.
The answer is they're not paying. They are not paying for water.
Yeah, they're paying.
City's paying the water bill.
Yeah, they're paying $35 for their
membership.
For their plant. Yeah, for their plot or whatever it is. No, not to us. They're paying $35. They're paying $35 as coming out of their pockets, and then this 35 would be another additional 35 to them, which would then be $70. And the communities that live on either side of us don't do that. They encourage people to come, have a community garden, share their food, share the food that they're creating.
Okay. Well, wait. Yes. Hold on.
Just the recommendation is to re-enter. I'm not sure where this $35 is coming from. The motion is to re-sign the lease agreement at $1 a year. That's what I'm voting on. So I'm not sure where this extra $35.
But in the lease, it says that they'd have to pay for water, which they don't pay for now.
It doesn't say that in this here.
But it says it in the lease. If you read the lease, it's very clear.
It's in the lease.
What page?
Well, they're saying.
Oh, I had it.
Don't think so.
Yep, it's in there.
For Mayor Worship, section 7.1, it's on page 6 of 16.
Would you read it, please, Mr. Russell?
And it's page 123 of 135 of the agenda. So it says, the tenant is solely responsible for and will promptly pay all charges for water and any other utility or service used or consumed with respect to the premise. The landlord will not be liable to the tenant in damages or otherwise for an interruption or failure in the supply of utilities or service to the premise unless caused by gross negligence of the landlord or other persons whose negligence the landlord is responsible for by law.
No. It's a new lease. Okay.
So I would like to make a motion that...
Okay, but just before you do, have you any idea of the percentages of food that they give away to their neighbors or that they give away to organizations that need food?
No, I don't. I didn't ask for the
20%, 30%,
percentage.
40%?
I didn't ask for the percentage, Mr. Mayor. You know, what I think is that, again, that the city encouraged people to come and garden, and we did that because we knew that it was part of their of helping out with their health and wellness in our community that is made up mostly of seniors. I know, especially my own mother, who is a senior, this would be extremely...
Okay, so go ahead and make your motion.
So my motion is that I would like...
We have a motion on the floor. I can't do that. Wait a minute. We have a motion on the floor.
I'd like to make a motion.
So, well, you can't because we have a motion on the floor. You want to speak to the motion on the floor? Go ahead, Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Your Worship. Unless is a motion just to
Well, I'd like to
receive at
amend
this
it.
point in time or to also...
No, it's to
Okay.
I'd like to amend it then.
To execute the lease.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to amend it then.
I'm talking at the same time.
Well, I've been trying.
No, but
You keep moving
I think
on.
I have the microphone now, though. Okay. I can appreciate, I'm really torn about this, I'll be honest. I would really like to, I really do support the concept and the real application of community gardens, and it's something I always visit in any community I do go and visit, truthfully. And I do believe that in most cases it's provided at no charge. That being said, I am also aware of other institutions that we have in this town. The museum is a prime example which comes to mind, which is set up on city land and also provides wonderful opportunities for the volunteers to get involved, and the Friday night market, socializing, opportunities for local produce, and in its own way help support and promote agriculture, which I think is really important for us. And yet they are obliged to pay for water. So I have trouble, saying that we shouldn't charge this group when we do charge another. If somebody wanted to make an amendment to give them half, but for those reasons, I would want to support the recommendation.
Before I call the vote on the original motion, what does it represent? What kind of an increase does it represent if they have to pay for all their water? Councillor Salter, about $35?
So it was 30. Peter advised that it was $35.
Another $35 on top of the fees,
which would equal 70. So my amendment was to half that. So if we need to charge them, rather than charging them $35, we charge them half.
Okay. So, Councillor, what we have before you, we have a motion on the floor that says they would pay for all the water the way it's written. Councillor Rhodes.
Not, so accept it.
Thank you, Worship. I think we should separate the resolutions into three separate ones. That would enable us to deal with the issue that Councillor Salter has a concern with. So I recommend that the three recommendations be dealt with separately as opposed as an omnibus resolution.
I'll second that.
I can do that. Okay, so
I move the first recommendation.
I have a seconded by Councillor Beal. Any discussion on the first recommendation that the society lease agreement be received? Call the vote. All those in favor? Thank you.
Okay, I move the second recommendation.
Seconder for that.
I'd like to speak to that, Your Worship.
Okay, Councillor Burton seconded it. You go ahead, Councillor.
Your Worship, what does the inclusion of the requirement of the group to pay for the water how much does that cost us right now to provide water to them on a yearly basis?
I'm going to guess close to $400 a year. $425 a year.
$425 a year? Well, you got to be pretty married to your principles if you're going to deny this group $425 a year for water, for a group that's coming out. We're an organic green community. It's a community garden, for God's sake. Right, we're community. $425? You know, if you want to save $425, come up with a better idea than that. Stop wasting our time. Let's give them to pay for. Take that. I'll vote against this lease agreement unless 7.1 is taken out and we pay for the water for $425 a year. We've wasted that much time here tonight debating it.
So I'd like to make a motion to remove that from the lease agreement.
Okay,
Can I get a seconder?
Wait a minute. So what do we do with item number 2? Do we vote on it?
We amend it to remove it.
Can I do that, Mr. CAO? Okay, so that's what we're voting on.
I'm seconding.
Councillor Beale, do you want to speak?
Well, I have to second.
Okay, let Councillor Beale speak.
He needs a seconder. I'm seconding.
You're seconding it. Okay, Councillor Beale.
Just that my comment is that I don't believe that we should completely remove 7.1, but rather that remove the reference to paying all charges for water and any other utility service or use, etc. But the landlord will not be liable to the tenant in damages or otherwise for interruption or failure in the supply of services. I think should be left in there.
You okay with that, Councillor Oates?
I really don't know what that means. Here's my intent, that this garden society pays $1 a year.
That's covered by Councillor Beale's amendment, which I consider to be a friendly amendment. Okay? But before I call the vote, Councillor Burton.
We got 23 plots that are gardened by individuals in the community who take all but one of the plots home with them for their own use. We've got, and 23 times 35 is $805, which is far in excess of any water charges. I'm not in support of removing 7.1 completely. I don't know if maybe they'll decide to garden by night and put in all kinds of lights and incur charges to BC Hydro that we'll then be liable for because that's a utility. They may want to heat the greenhouses that they install at a later date with gas, which is a utility, which we'll end up paying for because it's part of that agreement. I am absolutely prepared to cut the water charges to some percentage, but I believe they should be responsible for some of it. I'm responsible for the water that I use on my garden. My next door neighbor is responsible for the water charges that they use on their garden. And in essence, these are people that may not have the opportunity to garden in their homes, so the city is giving them an opportunity to garden in the community, which is a great concept. And if all of the produce was going to the food bank, then I'd be totally in support of supporting all of the water payments. But I'm not in support of paying for all of the water, but I certainly would support paying for some of it.
Okay, Councillor Salter, anybody else other than Councillor Salter, because I basically know what you're going to say. You're in favor of it, so you don't have to repeat yourself.
I am in favor of not charging anything.
I know that.
And I do want to state that, once again, this is not just about growing food for seniors. This is about getting out. This is about, we just listen to, our two doctors sit here and say, oh my goodness, we're short in doctors. So this is exercise for folks. He's right. People are living in apartments. So yeah, you're lucky that you can go in your backyard and turn the hose on. You've got a backyard. Lots of these people don't have backyards. They are giving food away, and they're giving it to their neighbors who also can't afford to buy food. So this is not just about water.
So we have the motion by Councillor Oates with the modification that it doesn't change. It's just the water.
So no charge for water.
That would satisfy.
Water, or are we removing 7.1 completely?
We're removing
just the water. 7.1 is modified to remove the cost for water. Is that correct?
That's
you got
correct.
that? Okay. Going to call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Number 3, that the mayor and corporate... Yes, I know. I saw that. You silver-tongued devil, you. Okay. Item number 3, that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the lease agreement on behalf of the City of Parksville. Seconded by Councillor Salter. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Okay. The next one is a rise and report, appointment of advisory design panel members. You had that in your agenda. And I just need a mover and a seconder for that. We talked about it in camera. We're coming out of camera. Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Burton. Any comments? All of those in favor? Thank you. That is also unanimous. Okay, we're coming to the new business portion, and I have a number of things under new business. So, Council, if you'll bear with me, I'll go through those, and then I'll go around the table for other items of new business. The Community Park Resident Survey. Reminder to residents to please complete the online survey about the community park. I did mine today. We look forward to receiving comments from our residents, which will be compiled by Vancouver Island University to start to frame their work on the city's community park master plan. The deadline to complete the survey is May the 26th, and students will be at the waterfront gazebo in the community park on June the 8th to get more feedback from residents. Next is the Community Park Splash Park project. The city is grateful for the support of the Parksville Lions Club and the Rotary Club of Parksville AM, who have come together to make a splash to raise $100,000 to replace the outdated sprayer park in the Parksville Community Park. The public is invited to the campaign kickoff event on Friday, May the 19th at noon near the Lions Ventureland Playground, hosted by the Lions Club and Rotary Clubs. Please keep that in your agenda, and I think the weather's going to be okay. Emergency Management Oceanside on Saturday, May the 27th. Emergency Management Oceanside will host an Emergency Preparedness Expo at the Parksville Curling Rink from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Displays, demonstrations, and workshops to learn about the challenges we face in an emergency and how to better be prepared. Opportunities for residents to ask questions and get the best information on how to be better prepared for emergencies. You can even bring your fire extinguisher to get it tested. Next, the PDBA Wayfinding Information Session. The Parksville Downtown Business Association will host a public information session on Tuesday, May the 30th at the Parksville Community and Conference Center. Residents are encouraged to drop in between 2 and 7 p.m. to learn about the City of Parksville PDBA joint wayfinding system designed to create a more pedestrian-friendly downtown. Next, Summer Coffee with Council schedule. For the summer months starting in June, Coffee with Council will be held the first and third Thursdays. Next, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business recently ranked the City of Parksville as the #2 in the province and on Vancouver Island in our ability to control spending. Congratulations to staff and council. The previous year, the city ranked 3rd, and last year's ranking, the city was in 6th place. I want to congratulate everybody for their hard work in order for us to accomplish that, and it's a significant accomplishment. And lastly, the Access Oceanside Association of Wheel Walkabout will be held during the week of June 19th to 25th on a date that is yet to be decided. The Wheel Walkabout raises awareness about accessibility in our city. And now, does any member of council have any new business? I'm going to go to Councillor Beal first.
Thank you, Worship, and I do have a number of items, and I'll get through these fairly quickly, I hope. First of all, Saturday, May 13th, just this recent Saturday, Councillor Oates and I took part in the Parksville Broom Busting event, and the cut took place along... Broom busting?
Sorry. It's raining where I live. That's why I didn't go.
I didn't know you'd melt in the rain. Mayor LaFave. It's okay. The rain's good. The cut took place along, it didn't even rain much, along Chattel Road and the eastbound ramp off Highway 19. And there was a nice turnout considering the dates have been changed more than once. Good progress was made, although we didn't quite get all the broom in the area. And it was a very nice opportunity to spend some time outdoors with positive community members making a difference. And the cookies and prize draws were an added treat. Also, recently, May 3rd, I attended the Oceanside Task Force on Homelessness meeting, and the website is now up and running. The address is oceansidehomelessness.com, and our Director of Communications, Deb Tardif, provided some assistance with this, and the site gives really good information on the history of the task force, findings, services offered, and provides an opportunity for comments. Also coming up later this month, early June, I guess, but you can get onto the website now. Mental Health Week is coming up. with a focus on how things are funded. And again, you can go to a website. It's called B4 Stage 4. Stage 4 being a reference to crisis. So much better if we can get on to things before there is a crisis. So it's just the letter B, digit 4, and then stage 4.ca, and it's a very good source for information as well as the opportunity to sign a petition. Also, we received council received a request from a student group at Bolinas Secondary School, and I'd like to make a motion in support of their request. And this is for a painting of a rainbow crosswalk in support of the LGBTQT community. And my motion is that staff be directed to work with Bolinas Secondary School Gender and Sexuality Alliance to paint one of the existing crosswalks on Pym Street in front of Bolinas Secondary School in rainbow colors in support of the LGBTQT community. And secondly, that funding for the project be taken from council contingency.
I have a seconder for that. Councillor, I think I saw Councillor Burden's hand go up first. Okay, so Councillor Burden has seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Do you want to explain first, and then I'll go to Councillor Salter.
Perhaps I'd just like to add that I did a little follow-up of following the request from the student group and spoke with one of the vice principals at the school to be assured that this is a group that's endorsed at the school and that there is support for the request, and it absolutely is sanctioned, a sanctioned request. And the request is that this come from contingency, and I am hoping and assuming that it would not be overly costly. When I was speaking with Mr. Russell earlier today about this possibly going forward, he mentioned that I believe there are even some crosswalks that are done with temporary painting rather than, the all-out permanent sort. So, in the month of June, they are having their first Pride Awareness Month, and a rainbow crosswalk would promote a welcoming, safe, and inclusive community for all students at the school.
Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to mention that Nanaimo has the rainbow crosswalks as well, but they're down on Commercial Street. So they're right in the downtown core, and they're awesome. I think they're great. It's something I had been wanting to bring up at council actually for a while, but I keep forgetting. But I'd really like to see more than just one over at Bolinas. I'd really like to see these at least down Craig Street. So because they're and also I'd like to see permanent rather than short term. I'd like to see the sidewalk remain. Rather than something that kind of wears out and goes back to the regular old thing. They're so joyful to see those colors, especially in the fall and spring when it's just not really nice out there. And then there's these sidewalks that look really nice, and they're high visibility. So I'd like to see more than just one at Bolinas.
Thank you for that, Councillor Burden.
Through you to Councillor Beale, I trust they're going to submit the appropriate documentation as to our revised policy with regard to these types of financial requests.
Anybody else? Councillor Patterson. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to touch on Councillor Salter and Councillor Beale's that it is refreshing, and that there are different businesses throughout the community that have sidewalk chalk, and that just outside their businesses, and you will see sometimes that there's kids and adults and that enjoying and brightening up some of the sidewalks in our community already. But I would like to maybe think about this for future reference. I'm not making a motion at this point in time. Thank you.
What I'd like to meet the request of Bolinas to start off with, and then we'll talk to staff and see where we go from there, and we could maybe have a dialogue. Councillor.
Yeah, what exactly was the request for Bolinas? I thought the request was for them to paint it.
their request was for support in order to do this, and when I did make the follow-up phone calls, I understood that they would be quite pleased to assist as possible. However, they also thought that maybe they wouldn't be able to, given the fact that it's out on the road. So, it was just to the degree that they would be able to assist with actually implementing it, yes, but they didn't know how much or how little they could do.
Well, I'd hate to see giving away our work, so that'd be my only concern.
I'm going to call the vote. Let's start off with this request and develop a relationship with this group from Bolinas and see where we go from there. All those in favor? Thank you. That's carried. One more item. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Yeah, it's been a busy month. I'd just like to mention that Wednesday, May 10th, some of our local doctors hosted a Walk with Your Doc event down in the community park. And I would say, by my estimate, there were close to perhaps even 75 people that took part. There were warm-up exercises with a special focus on the importance of balance activities. I certainly learned some new exercises. And a lovely walk along the boardwalk, basically double length. So hats off to our local doctors for promoting exercise. And it was a great event. And yes, it rained, but not very much.
Anybody else have any new business? Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two things. One is, and my question is actually to Mr. Squire. With regard to testing for the river or water samples, are these public, or can you provide council with any of your recent tests, say from 2015? Like, are you testing for things like arsenic, lead, cadmium, those sort of things, mercury?
Yeah, through your worship. All our tests are online on our parcel webpage, and they're done annually on a full spectrum. So they're testing everything in that water, including all the full spectrum of minerals, including compliance with the drinking water watershed protection, Canadian drinking water guidelines. And then there's weekly tests, which are also available. So it's all online.
So the weekly tests are online?
The annual full spectrum is online, and then the weekly test we submit to Island Health.
Would council be able to see a copy of the weekly tests?
Sure.
Perhaps, maybe just even recent tests, probably from, where are we? Probably just January of this year. So, how can we get them?
Sure.
Thank you
and I'll point the link to the full spectrum analysis, which is everything in that water.
Yeah, looking especially, as I say. Yeah, it's my thing. Especially arsenic, lead, those things. And then my next question, my next thing is, as council knows, and the mayor obviously knows, we're going to Ottawa, leaving on the 31st of June. And I just want to put out there an invitation. I have already done this to a lot of folks that I have on my contact list, but I just want to put out there to the public that if you've got a message, if you've got anything that you would like me to take to Ottawa, you want to speak to someone on your behalf, if you put it in writing, I would be more than willing to do that for you. So if you email it to me, and I am having trouble with my email lately, but if you want to email it to me or phone me, my contact information is on the city website, and I would be more than willing to do that.
My last item is that, as Councillor, following up on Councillor Salter's, we are going to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference. We leave on the 31st of May, I guess. It's a 4-day conference. This year it's in Ottawa, and I haven't received anything yet in terms of a formal agenda. But when I get it, I'll send it out to all members of council and get it to Mrs. Tardif for any other public consultation that's required, if anybody wants to get back to us. Other than that, anybody else? Councillor Burton.
Keeping in line with outdoor activity, being healthy, not raining, the big bike still has a couple of seats left on May the 24th, and it would be perfect for you, Mayor Lefebvre, because it's at 8 o'clock in the morning, which is, I know, your prime time. So if you're at all interested in shedding a few calories as you cycle through the downtown on the 29-seat big bike in support of the Heart and Stroke Foundation, get a hold of me.
I'll be there in my pajamas, but I'll be there.
Good. Your pajamas will fit in with the rest of our ensemble.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess it must be that exercise and fresh air type conversations, because it's also bike to work. And that, so if Councillor Beale wants to touch on that, she can. But also the Bolinas students had a garage sale, raised close to $2,000 that they plan to put towards the Lions Splash Park, which is fabulous, and it'll be one of their projects going forward. They've had some really amazing ones in this last school year. Graduation their prom of such will be on June 30th of this year, and we'll be touching base a little bit later in regards to the parade route and everything as well. So I just wanted to touch on that because that'll be on a Friday. And activity in the community. Mother's Day, the walk and run had the most participants in that this year, which is absolutely fabulous. And I'm not sure if other councillors have had some emails in regards to sea lion off of the hovercraft, but I just wanted to touch on that since we have media and that here as well, that unfortunately it is not a city mandate that we can deal with, that it has to be with DFO and fisheries and other environmental organizations, and that will end up looking after that aspect of nature. So, thank you.
So, on that note, I'm going to call for an adjournment. Do I have a mover for adjournment? Councillor Salter, seconded by Councillor Beale. All those in favor, we are adjourned. Thank you. See everybody next time.